friends. Welcome to episode 203 of School Librarians United. I am your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian in my 16th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. So friends, one of my goals in having this podcast is an opportunity to give listeners who are tuning in an opportunity to really reflect and think about themselves in the conversations that we have. And I'll tell you what, this letter from the mailbag is really going to give all of us a little bit of pause, regardless of where we are professionally in our lives. And I was very excited when Becca from Oregon took the time to share with me her thoughts, and even more so that she gave me permission to share her letter with you right now. So friends, Becca from Oregon wrote, "Hi, Amy. I'm a new library media assistant in an elementary school in Oregon. I have been feasting on your fantastic podcast since this summer when I was applying for this position. I appreciate the time and thought you and your guests have put into your fantastic content. One topic I don't believe which has been touched upon is the role of people like me, LMAs or LMSs who act as librarians, but who cannot call themselves librarians, and more to the point, cannot be paid like a librarian. I absolutely respect the difference between a person who has a degree in library science and myself, who does not. However, in my library, I do everything that a librarian would do. The kids, teachers, and parents refer to me as the librarian, parentheses, the administration is careful not to, however, in parentheses. I feel like a fraud, LOL, because I know that real librarians are fully aware that posers like myself are not, in fact, librarians. My question to you is, what do you think of, quote, librarians, end quote, like myself? Do you welcome us into your world? Do you welcome our input? Where do we fit in this world of librarians? Can I come out of the shadows and proudly state that I listen to your podcast and that it is useful and inspiring to me as an LMA? LOL, I'd love for you to explore the role of non-librarian librarians like myself in school libraries today. We are paid very little and asked to do a ton, and we are asked to step into the shoes of our predecessors, parentheses, who now, if they are still working in the district, are district librarians who train and support us in weeding projects and purchasing, etc., and parentheses. It's just such an imperfect change in the name of budget cutting. I know that there is a lot to unpack here, and I doubt that many folks are in a position where they can vent or discuss this issue freely. But at a minimum, I'd love to know where I fit in the library world and what real librarians think of us. Thank you for all you do, Becca, Library Media Assistant in Oregon." And when I asked her if I could share this letter, she said, absolutely, but I will quote what she said. She said, "I definitely want to be clear that I respect the real trained librarians and that I know I'm not one of them / you. I'm just wondering, what am I, and is it okay to have pride in what I do as a wannabe librarian? I hope that the subject will interest you, your listeners, and will result in some valuable conversation." So friends, I was absolutely floored by this email. And this is one of those things that when I look at it, and I sort of was doing this during my lunch, and I will be perfectly honest, I was realizing at the time I was absolutely not going to be able to sort of wrap my head around all the amazing and incredibly valid points which Becca raised. And friends, I know that all of you listening right now have your own feelings about the issues that Becca has raised. And regardless of how you feel about individuals who are in the library but did not go to a library school and have a certificate or a master's degree, I think is absolutely indisputable the passion and the emotional investment that she has made in a job that she very clearly loves and enjoys, and she should feel proud about what she does. And I do not dispute that for 1 minute. And I want to make sure that I have never wanted anyone to feel like they weren't welcome to be part of this listening community. Over the years, I have become very aware of all of the wonderful listeners who are tuning in each week. And I consider our listening community one of my greatest achievements, as well as bringing 3 little humans into this world who have turned out to be lovely adults. I am overjoyed when I learn who is listening to these episodes each week, and to find out that many of the people who are tuning in are in fact not librarians. Many of them happen to be classroom teachers who are considering going into library science. Many of them happen to be community and volunteers who will want to work in the school libraries, and for circumstances that are beyond their control, there isn't a certified school librarian in their library. And I happen to know that there are a lot of library students who are tuning in each week, as well as some of their instructors who build these episodes into their syllabus to generate opportunities for conversation. I've heard from rookie librarians, I've heard from veteran librarians, and you know what? I'm very aware that there are many people like Becca who are dipping their toe into the library world, and they're doing so in a way that is afforded to them because the districts where they're going to work do not require a degreed certified school librarian, and yet it doesn't in any way diminish their commitment and their passion for the space that they work in. And I want to make sure that that comes across when I speak to everybody who's listening right now. I think it is also especially important to mention at this point that regardless of where you live and work in the world, that oftentimes the circumstances of our employment, whether it's full-time or part-time, certified or not, is determined not by ourselves, but rather the circumstances that have been established by the districts we work in, by the administrators who have created the job expectations for which we are interviewing. And I want to especially mention this because in this case, and it's heartbreaking because Becca said that she considers herself a fraud. And this is, again, heartbreaking because no one should ever feel like a fraud because they feel passionately about what they do. And I want to just put myself out there. Friends, I work in a job right now, which is a learning commons. My job is, in fact, not a librarian, but I am an information research technology specialist, and for which a librarian's degree was going to be considered eligible for this job. I will tell you right now, I have not checked out a book to a student in a week because my particular space really is not supporting books right now. Do I feel like a fraud talking to you on this podcast called School Librarians United, being the host? Oh, absolutely. I feel like a fraud every day. And I am fine with that because right now I provide value to my school community and I feel amazingly good about how I spend each day that I'm there. But would I match your description of what a librarian does? I don't know. But I'll be honest, I know that what I do every day matters. And I know that what Becca does in her school every day matters. And the fact that I went to library school and she did not does not in any way make what I do more important than what she does every day. So I just wanted to put that out there. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me either on Facebook, on Twitter, my handle is @LMS_United, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. I suppose it's worth mentioning right now that you can also find the podcast on Mastodon, CounterSocial, and Hive. Although I have no idea how to work any of those platforms, I'm going to give it a go. And now a word from our official sponsor, Capstone. Capstone is an innovative publisher and education technology provider of children's content for school libraries, classrooms, and at-home learning. Home of the award-winning PebbleGo research database, Capstone has a passion for creating inspired learning and intellectual curiosity in children, and I am so excited to be working with them. And now in a segment I like to call Why I Love Capstone. Friends, in today's show notes, you will find a dedicated link to Mythology matchups. And I was so excited when I saw this series. It's a new 2023 series, and it's a 4-book series. It's informational text with a reading level of grades 3 and 4 and an interest level of grades 3 through 5. And this is the kind of book that you want to buy for your collection for your Percy Jackson fans. And these are informational texts, but these are mythology matchups. I'll read the description here. Imagine gods and goddesses from across mythology clashing in matchups of strength, skill, and wit. Who would come out on top? Using details from myths, mythology matchups uncover the strengths, weaknesses, abilities, and powers of popular gods and goddesses. High-interest text, engaging photo illustrations, and infographics will have mythology fans in deep debate as they decide the winner of these mythology matchups. And friends, this reminded me of the Who Would Win series. And I know my students just love that series because it matches animals up, and you have to figure out who's going to win, and they sort of argue the different strengths and weaknesses of them. In this case, we're just dealing with gods and goddesses. So we've got 4 books in this series: Diana versus Athena, Battle of the Goddesses; Hercules versus Thor, the epic matchup; Loki versus Hermes, the Trickster Showdown; and Zeus versus Ra, Cosmic Clash of the Gods. And again, these are all 2023 copyright, and they would be in mythology, but I think, like many of these Capstone series, you ought to just put them on top of the shelf, fan them out, and have kids take a look. And I think this is really fun because you could expand this and have your readers create their own clashes and pick which gods they want to pin against one another. And that would be really fun because and mythological creatures, there you go. You could sort of do this spin-off. And what kinds of matchups would your students come up with? And that would be a really fun display that you could do with your students. So friends, be sure to check out Mythology Matchups by Capstone. I am so grateful to Capstone for their continued commitment to support the podcast in Season 5. They are offering listeners of School Librarians United a very special discount. Visit shop.capstonepub.com and use the code UNITED to get $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and Capstone interactive ebooks. That's code UNITED for $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and ebooks on shop.capstonepub.com. For those of you who are hoping to hear Angie Myers and our episode, Greatest Hits Middle School Library, be sure to tune in as we will post this conversation in early 2023. And now for our episode, Greatest Hits Elementary Library, and my conversation with Kristy Barker. Kristy Barker, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor to be a part of this. I've listened to your podcast for the last year and a half, and they have completely changed my library.
Well, you're very sweet. Well, I'll tell you what, the pleasure's all mine. And friends, you're going to realize right away why Kristy Barker has been invited for this particular episode. Congratulations, Kristy. You were recently named Elementary Teacher of the Year for your school district. Mind you, not Elementary Librarian, friends, Elementary Teacher of the Year. Kristy, that's huge.
It is huge. It was a shock, especially, but I'm very honored. Being a classroom teacher and knowing what that's like, and then stepping into this new role, it was a great honor to know that my teachers, our teachers, saw me as one of the same. It was an honor. They're equal.
Kristy, there are a lot of listeners right now going, I would love to be recognized as a teacher. That would be wonderful. And I feel like you've achieved something that many of us have not. Let me ask, just for clarification, are you in the same school as a librarian as you were as a teacher?
I'm not.
Oh, that's even better. I mean,
I'm not. So yes, I've moved districts completely.
So in 2 short years,
Yes.
You've established yourself not only as a capable, competent librarian, but amongst your peers as an educator.
Correct. Yes.
Oh,
yay.
Oh, that makes this so interesting. So friends, let's get some context. Kristy, give us an idea where in the country you work. Tell us about your current library, what grades you support and the programs that you offer, and what is a typical day like for you?
All right. Well, I teach in Central Louisiana, which is a small town right outside of Baton Rouge. This is, as you said, my second year. I'm at a 3rd through 5th grade school, Central Intermediate School, where I have the privilege of serving a little over 1,000 students. We're a big school. And so I have a fixed schedule. So that means every 40 minutes, I get a new group of students every day. And it really is the best job on the planet. I love every second of it. Every day I pinch myself and think, this is what I get to do every single day.
Wow. And grades 3 through 5. I love that. I'm
perfect.
I can only imagine what your collection looks like, because these are going to be solid readers. You're going to have a lot of kids who are feeling really confident about the reading that they can do. And so you really want to sort of grow that love of independent reading.
Absolutely. And that was where I started with this job, was with the collection. When I walked into the library, I knew right away that I needed to know what we had, and I spent probably about 80 hours the summer before I started and went through every single book on the shelf, from weeding them. The collection was very dated. There was no labeling, so I went through and labeled. The only thing labeled were Dewey Decimal numbers, which mean nothing to an elementary student. So labeled all the shelves according to, category, dinosaurs, fossils, all of that good stuff. Created a whole graphic novel wall. We had about 50 graphic novels for 1,100 students. So I spent all of last year fundraising to build that collection, because we know we have visual learners and that's what they want, especially these younger readers, because I actually asked them, because there's all this pushback about graphic novels from people who just don't know. And I asked my readers, tell me why you love them. And they said, because I feel successful, because I'm not able to read a big chapter book yet, but I can read a chapter graphic novel book. And right now, my only option is a picture book, which is fun, but I don't have that same level of success. And over, they just emphasized in how the pictures helped them to make meaning. And so I knew that was part of the collection that we had to build upon. And so I spent all of last year and really into this year building that collection.
I'd be curious, because it sounds, if I'm not mistaken, you've been a teacher longer than you've been a librarian. Yes. Were you aware of how valuable and how much your students enjoyed graphic novels when you were a classroom teacher?
No, I was not. I was not. And I'm a little ashamed to say that I did not say this prior. I was a classroom teacher for 18 years. I taught ELA and social studies mostly. Well, I've taught kindergarten. I've taught kids how to read all the way from, reading to learn. And I really had a mock library in my classroom where kids from all over the school would come and check out books from my library. And I was really not aware of how graphic novels impacted students. And so, and the need for them until I moved into the librarian position.
Well, and it sounds like, as somebody who's been on that other side recently, that you would be the best person to talk to your teacher staff, and convey some of what this means to their students, because as somebody who's done 14 years of elementary library, there's always at least a handful in every building of teachers who are like, that can't come into my classroom. That can't come into my classroom. That's an at-home book. That's a fun book, but that's not for us. And
Right.
it's just soul crushing. You're like, oh, you're literacy shaming. Thank you,
Right.
Steve Tatro.
Yes.
You are literacy shaming and making these kids feel less because the books they love aren't valued in your eyes.
And we spend a lot of time, I do a whole genre unit. And although a graphic novel is not technically a genre, it's a format, but we spend a lot of time with my students. I'll say, how many of you have ever had someone tell you this isn't a real book? And, all of them raise their hand. Raise your hand if you've ever had someone say, you need to read something with words, and they all raise their hand. And I say, it's a real book. Listen to me. I'm the librarian. I know this. It's a real book. And I talk to my teachers about it. I've talked to our superintendent about it, who I have the privilege of teaching his daughter this year. And he came and talked to me about it. He's like, what about these graphic novels? And I said, let me just tell you. And I gave him the full spiel, and he's like, all right, I'm going to trust you. And it is such a bridge. And look, who cares if that's all you ever read? But it is a huge bridge for our third, fourth grade students who just aren't ready for those big chapter books. They're just too much. They were too much for me as a fourth and fifth grader. I was a struggling reader. So I feel like I can come at them with that knowledge and say, look, I know what it's like. And if this is what gets you there, let's embrace it.
I've had the pleasure of talking to school librarians who are teaching the students, the children of their coworkers. And it's always, you always see that opportunity for what it is, because you really get to sort of send that messaging home to somebody who really is going to say, oh, wow, that's what's happening in our library. I'm so excited.
Right.
You've got the superintendent's kid. I'd be a nervous wreck.
I do. No, it's great because you do get to show off like what we do in the library. And she is one of those students that comes through my door 3 times a day. So I'm sure she goes home and tells a lot. She comes before school, she comes during her recess, and she comes at the end of the day. And so I love that our district is getting to see what goes on in the library, because it is a learning space all day long.
You mentioned recess, and I'm dying to know, is this an opportunity for students to come in? I know every once in a while I had students in because they were on crutches or they had surgery and they couldn't do gym. So if you couldn't do gym, that's okay. You go up to the library with Mrs. Herman. But you mentioned recess. Is this an opportunity for you students? And I'm guessing because you live in a state that gets ridiculously hot, there might be students who are like, oh, I'd rather sit in the air conditioning and read a book.
I will have students that will ask, we have 1,100 students. We have recess all day long. However, I've got students who have asked if they could come work in the library. And so I let them. And so during their recess, they come. I can still teach a class. They come in, they know what to do. And our superintendent's little girl her recesses during my lunchtime. So we're able to have a lot more conversations and things like that. But for the most part, they come in, they shelve books, they do their task, and they love being a part of that space.
I miss my elementary library assistants. At one point I had probably about 50 of them, either between them, from during the class checkouts and in the morning. And for some of them, I'll be honest, they came to me because it was, free childcare. So their families were dropping them off and the kids were standing outside. And I was like, okay, we're going in the library now.
Right.
And maybe you can wash a few tables if you want to sharpen some pencils, or both, by the way, put some books away.
Right.
And all of a sudden I've got a whole bunch of kids in there who'd rather be in there than standing outside waiting for the doors to open at 8:00.
100%.
Kristy, I know listeners will be interested in learning all about you and your award-winning program. Do you know who nominated you? And by any chance, was it shared with you why they nominated you?
There was a survey monkey that went out with every teacher in the school's name and every staff member. So every staff member got to vote for whichever teacher they picked, and it was me. And so, unfortunately, you don't put comments with it, but I have had several teachers come and say, congratulate me and just thank me for bringing about a positive culture that was missing in the library. and bringing a love of reading to our school that was missing. And that's really been the overall theme that I continue hearing, just that positive culture and positive reading culture.
Wow. And, obviously those things don't happen overnight. Those things happen gradually. You sort of have to a daily commitment to that positivity and willingness to support. And, unfortunately, sometimes our buildings, the turnover of librarians doesn't happen very often. And so all of a sudden they get you, and this is very exciting, something to be celebrated. I'm curious. So as elementary teacher of the year, you've clearly overcome a hurdle that so many of us have, and that is being regarded as something other or not actually part of the teaching group in our buildings. Can you, obviously you're a new hire as well. How did you so quickly establish yourself as an educator as well as a librarian?
I've always seen myself as a leader, and I think leaders have the power to motivate others to be great. So I went in with this concept. If you've never read Jimmy Casas, Culturize, it's a game-changing book. And I read it several years ago, and I just keep that mentality that I am a leader, regardless of the role I'm in, and I will make a positive difference, and regardless of the role that I'm placed in. And so when I started last year, I was at a new school, no one knew me, and I asked my principal if I could speak at our first before school faculty meeting, because I wanted to introduce myself. I wanted to present myself as an educator and not just somebody who collects books, and go over my goals for our school year. And there was a little pushback because I am new, and I don't know who else wanted that position, or there was just a lot of pushback. But I stood firm, and my principal backed me 1,000%. I had asked her before I started, what's the one thing you want me to accomplish this year? You tell me what you want from me, and I'll make it happen. And she said, I want our students to love reading. And I said, I can do it. I can do that. I might not know a whole lot about how to be a librarian, but I can make kids love reading. And so there had to be some big school changes for me to do that. With leveling of books and what's required and that sort of thing. And so I talked to my principal and said, there's no way that I can create a love of reading if we have kids boxed into levels. So number one, we have to take that off. And I'm at one of the top schools in our state, and there's a push for you push these kids in every way possible. And I said, we have to take that away. And she's like, okay, if you say so, we'll take it away. So props to her, because she has backed me with every piece of evidence I've come to her with. So I went into this faculty meeting, and there were teachers kind of saying, well, what about this? And what, and I just had to put my happy smile on and say, but our goal is that they're reading, and it doesn't matter what they're reading. And the rigor that goes on in the classroom, these kids have, the classroom content's rigorous. When they come to the library, that's for enjoyment. And so trying to get that message across, and she allowed me to do that. And it took me about a year to convince them that I was going to stick to my guns and this was going to work. And I think over the year, as they saw the students' excitement, as library got voted number one ancillary over PE and everything else, like every kid wanted to come to the library. I think they saw the change in the students. They saw that I was teaching lessons. I was asking to collaborate with them, and what could I do to help them? What could I do? What are your students missing that they need more support and that I could help them with in the library? And so I was taking those things and mixing them into my library lessons to provide support to the teachers. And I think when they saw I was on their team, and then I was on the team of the students, that I was a part of the school, and I was going to be a big part of the school. I think they started to accept that my vision was for the good. And so I chose to serve our teachers and our students so that together as a school we could reach that common goal. And I think once they saw that, that was the game changer.
It is warmly received when teachers realize they have a partner in learning. And I love that you were informed that they liked your class better than gym, because as somebody who has always competed against gym, art, music, Spanish, it was very hard for me because there were some kids who definitely loved coming to the library. But at the end of the day, if they found out it was C Day and C Day is gym, they were like, yes. And so I can appreciate you sort of, we always feel a little sensitive about that when kids are like, oh, it's library. But so I'm curious, because you were up against quite a few sort of structural things that were in place before you got there. And one of them was leveling. And that is not easy to dismantle. Can I ask, was it AR?
It is. And we still use AR because that's a district policy. However, we had to change the parameters of it. And with that, my big change was kids can read whatever they want. You know, we can't box these kids in because we don't all fit in a box. And so what I did, I had a lot of pushback the first year. So I went into this year's faculty meeting, and I'll talk about this a little later. We talk about some staffing things, but we did a staff book club, and I started a staff book club. And so I pulled all the books that we read from our staff book club, and I put the levels beside them, and I posted them on our before school meeting this year, because there was still a good bit of pushback last year. And I said, okay, I know there was some pushback. However, let's just take a look at what we're reading. And when I put them up and showed, I'm like, oh gosh, you mean you were only reading a 4.7 level book? Ooh, shame, shame. You know, like you should be reading War and Peace, you know, and it was a little sarcastic, but also just a fun way to show we're all reading for pleasure outside of school, and we should allow our students to do the same thing. And so, although I have had some pushback, most of the teachers have embraced it 100%, and they see a change in the students' mindset, and it's evolving.
I've tried, I think anytime we realize what it's like for our students walking into a space, and let's remember, their classroom libraries are probably leveled, which means the kids are moving from this bin of books to this bin of books to this bin of books. I will never forget the day a student came to me and said, Mrs. Herman, I need Elemento P. And I said, because there actually is a book, there's a picture book called Elemental Peas or something like that. And I said, no, Mr. Herman, I need L, M, N, O. And I was like, oh, because in their classroom, the bins have letters on them, and those are the only books they're allowed to read. And it's been explained to me. I've read a lot of books about this, and the idea, how would you feel as an adult if somebody brought you a bin and said, whatever you read next has to come from this bin? It's soul crushing.
And you have to take a test on it, so now I have to stress while I'm reading it. I have to remember all these facts. So, yeah, I get it.
Well, and I love to read, and I loved to read, but writing for me is very hard. And so I remember wanting to read, and I was thinking, I should be an English major. Oh, wait a minute, I have to write too. I was like, well, I guess that's not going to work out. But, again, treating the students as readers and not just a Lexile level or, an AR level is a game changer for so many reasons. And the fact is, you did something that was very unpopular, and that was confront the established policies that were already in your building and said, you know what, our kids deserve better.
Right. And I'll have students come in and say, I need a 4th grade level book. And I'm like, tell me what you like to read. Tell me what you like. And they're like, you tell me your favorite movie. Okay, we're not going to worry about the level. We're going to pick a book you're going to love. That's how we approach books. And so they still are in this mindset, a lot of them. And even parents will push it too a little bit. So I always say, I don't really know the level. Just tell me what you love.
Wow. And I guess it would be really interesting to hear how your parents have received some of the changes that you've had, systemic changes in your space, because, all I know is when my kid comes home and loves to read, mission accomplished, right? I mean, you've done something that so many people have probably struggled to do with that particular student. I'd love to take a tour of your library. Would you describe for us what makes your space special? And what about your space do you think resonates most with your students and your staff?
I think what makes it, to start with, I know my collection, and I think any librarian has to know it. They have to know what it's lacking. They have to know, you've got to know where what you have. Because if not, you don't know what you can present to your children. But my space is beautiful. It's the center of the school, which I love. I feel like it's the heartbeat of the entire school. When you walk in the front doors, it's all glass. You see straight into the library so everyone can see what's going on. We're like in a fishbowl all day long, but it's great because I like people to know and see what we're doing. So you walk in, we've got, a meeting space right when you walk in, and then lots of flexible seating that's movable. The kids can move it wherever, depending on what we're doing. I've spent a lot of time, like I said, restructuring my collection, lots of signage for elementary students. There's signs, there's Velcro signs on the floor, there's signs up high, there's signs on the side to help guide them. I left Dewey Decimal alone. He is there. I didn't feel a need to change it because it is pretty accurate. I've tweaked some things with Dewey, but I have spent less time on the numbers and more on the labeling of what the collection of those books. This past summer, I genrefied our fiction section, which has been a game changer. I was noticing, so I have two popular sections. I've got popular series fiction, popular series nonfiction, and a graphic novel section. And I felt like 80% of what was circulating came from those three sections because it was easy for students to get to. It was easy. It was accessible. They didn't have to dig through shelving. So I wanted to try the Genrefying, see if that would change up the circulation, and it certainly has, because now my kids that enjoy fantasy know what section to go to if they love historical fiction. So it has improved circulation within our chapter books. So I've got two big popular series sections, graphic novel wall, genrefied fiction section. I left my picture books alone. Those are just, author's last name. We've got game spaces for the kids to play games. We've got a puzzle table, but it's a beautiful space, lots of natural light. We've got windows all the way around. Our back doors open up into a huge courtyard. So it really is the center of the school. And I love that it's in that place. But more than that, more than just the books and all of that, it's a loving, safe space. I feel like more than anything else, you've got to meet those emotional needs before you can even get the book in their hand. And I believe that I have created this culture, this loving culture, this love of reading culture that makes kids want to come in. And I model that behavior. I model what I want my students to replicate. And hopefully they grow as they see it. And so more than anything, this positive culture draws them in, and then the books are there. And that's,
I remember you mentioned that the teachers were doing a book club. Is that something that you all do together? And I'm just curious, are these books that people just bring in the books they're reading and they share with their group? Or have you tried to read books that are, at all educational in content? Or I'm curious, listeners are like, all right, what did you do with your book club with your teachers?
Okay. So when I started my first year, I wasn't, like I said, no one knew me. I was just kind of filling things out. So once a month, I sent out book recommendations, and I would do the different genres, books that I've read, and we did a different genre every month. So I would just post my favorite books from that genre, send it out, and then teachers would send me what they were reading. And we had a teacher wall where their picture would go up and I would put the book that they were reading. And the kids love it. They don't know the titles of these books, but they're like, look, my teacher's reading blah, 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 blah. Look at her. She's reading this. And so the kids love coming and just looking at the pictures of their teachers. And they love seeing that their teachers are readers as well. And so it started that way where I just recommended books and then teachers sent in. And at the end of the school year, I had a teacher approach me about maybe doing a summer book club. And I said, absolutely. And I chose 5 books, sent out a Google form. Teachers voted on the 2 that they wanted to read over the summer. And so we read one in June. We met at a Mexican restaurant and discussed our books. I've had 3 teachers who've not read a book since college read the books. One said she was reading them just so she could go eat Mexican food and socialize with everyone else. She was going to read the book for that. And so she has come every time. So we read those, and then we decided once school started, we would do one every other month just because it gets busy during the school year. And so we've continued that. This month we're doing a memoir, which is The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. Have you read it?
Oh my God. Okay. So seriously, friends, this was the most disturbing book I've ever read in my life. So we do a memoir unit, and I am not kidding when I say, this is done as the excerpts are read to my 11th graders to get them excited about reading. And friends, it's about child abuse and neglect. I'm just going to say it right now. Spoiler. But I will tell you, having not read it, I was like, you know what? If they're reading this in class, I'm going to read it too. And here are these, 11th graders reading this book, and I'm sure they're fascinated. I was like hand over my mouth. I'm like, this is the most terrifying book I've ever read. And again, like if you get adults reading it and teenagers reading it, I bet they have very different takes on this book. But, I love, the way you've described how this has sort of taken off, it makes me realize that adult readers are very much like our student readers who want to be considered readers. It is an identity that is so, we see everybody falling into groups and being labeled. But if somebody identifies with you as a reader, that's a wonderful thing. And the kids want you to think of them as readers. 100%. Newsflash, your staff wants you to think of them as readers, even if it's just for the margaritas.
I got them there for the margaritas. They read a book. But yeah, so I had to push them out of their comfort zone, which is also funny because, teachers want to, push the students out of their comfort zones, but they don't want to be pushed out. So I said, we're going to read a memoir. And The Glass Castle was one that I felt as educators, it just gave you insight to see your students a little bit differently. I always said it was a book that you should read before you start teaching, just to see the way students kind of cover things that they don't want seen at school. But we are going to do our school. We do a lot of professional development reading as is. So I come from a district of a lot of readers. So I think that's what makes my job so great. So another thing we do in the library, I have Miss Barker's reading, little, Bitmoji with my books. My principal has one with her books. And when our district comes into the school, they always peek and they always want to see what we're reading. And my principal, I had forgotten to put hers up, and they're like, where's your book? Why aren't you reading a book? And she's like, that's because Miss Barker forgot to put it up. But anyway, I love that everyone kind of peeks to see what we're reading. And now to hear the staff talking about these books, like, have you finished it yet? You walk in the cafeteria and this one's talking about, I finished it, or I'm on chapter 5, or it's just this community of readers is started with our students, but it's traveled to the teachers, and it's really a beautiful thing.
Well, and friends, if you've ever tried to do something similar where you broadcast what each teacher is reading, like on the outside of your door, and I've told my teachers, send your pics and I'll just make the little poster and I'll laminate it and put it in your mailbox. And they're like, oh, that's easy. And I'm like, I know. So, but we do this, and a couple of responses I've gotten has been, well, I have to think of something clever because I'm kind of embarrassed of what I like to read. And you're like, okay, but that's the point. Like when we read for fun, you're not trying to impress anybody. And I think we should have the same attitude of when again, literacy shaming. Mm-hmm. Let's not decide what is worth reading for other people.
Right.
Because that's not the point. Oftentimes we're reading because for all the reasons, we need to take that break. We need to remove ourselves from the stressors of our everyday. Newsflash, the kids do too.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to ask you, Kristy, I know that our library web pages are sometimes a window into our program. There's things that we can feature in our web pages that we might not be able to otherwise describe, but if you wouldn't mind including a link to your webpage, and with the understanding, let's all give everybody some grace, because maintaining a website is not only tiresome, but it's very hard to feel that's very rewarding, because it's something that's sort of in the background that some people see, but many people never do. But if we were to look at your website, what would be there that's indicative of this award-winning program that you have?
Okay, so the website is cislibrary.org. I hope that it reflects a love of reading at our school throughout. The front page has our morning library times. I always post what I'm reading, Miss Barker's reading. We do something at our school called Book Talk Tuesday. And students can submit a Google form telling me what they're reading. They give me a summary of why they liked it, a little summary about why they recommend it, a hashtag. They have to create a hashtag for the book. And they come and take their picture holding their book. And every Tuesday, any student that's done that throughout the school, I upload their picture and information to this Google slide that's on our webpage, but it's also on every student's Google Classroom. So at any time, if a student's looking for a book recommendation, they go to Book Talk Tuesday and they can click through all the students in our school. It just automatically updates as I add new slides. That's on there. That's been a really big game changer at our school. The students love to see themselves featured. They love to show the school that they're a reader, and it promotes literacy for all of our students. They could find that. I have reading testimonies. Every now and then a kid will say something profound, and I'm like, I need to write that down, and I need to make a graphic about it. Last year, when I was having a lot of pushback about leveling, I had this sweet little girl come in. She had the book Corduroy. She had it just wrapped in her arms. And she said, I'm so glad I found this book. And I said, oh, yeah, I love that book. I used to read it to my little boy. And she said, this book reminds me of sitting in my mama's lap as a little girl and her reading it to me. And I thought, that means like that comfort. And she just had that book held so tight. And I thought, that's why we don't level books. That's why we don't box kids in, because that book gave her such comfort. And, I don't know if maybe her mom's still at home. I don't know her family situation, but you could tell the love she felt for that book. And so I made a testimony about it, and I took her picture with that book and I sent it out to everyone. Like, look what reading what you want can do. And so I have graphics on there, our World Read Aloud Week, where we had our district. I sent out an email like, I'm not afraid to ask anybody for anything. All they can say is no. So I sent out an email to all of our staff, all of our district, and said, look, it's World Read Aloud Week. Our kids want to see you reading. Send us in stuff. And so I've got that slide on there. We had people from our district do videos of them like doing all this crazy stuff, like our HR people, teachers reading to chickens, teachers read to dogs, to their grandkids, and kids were sending in, pictures of them at home reading. So that's on there, our newsletter, a place where our students can hold books. So I hope when you go to our website, you'll kind of get a glimpse into how we promote the love of reading.
Well, and I love that first and foremost is the messaging that's coming from your students, because they are your stakeholders. They're the ones who, this is why we're here.
Mm-hmm.
They are the reason why we exist and the reason why we come to work every day. And to have them be your advocates of what you do is so compelling. How can you look at a kid and say, anything other than, oh my gosh, this is an amazingly significant part of this child's growth is to be part of your library space. So much of what librarians do in our space reflects the relationship that we built with our administration. Can you share some ways in which you have worked together with your administration to support the needs of your school community?
Yes. First and foremost, my administration is wonderful. They or why I'm successful, because they back me. My principal, like I said, I went to her and said, what do you want me to do? And she said, I want our students to love reading. And so she has been Team Kristy from the get-go. And last year I went to her with several wacky ideas because my brain's always going. And at first she was like, let me just see how it works out. And I think after I proved myself a few times, I think she realized she's going to do it and she's going to follow through and she's a game changer. And so now she finally said to me, look, if you know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, you just go with it. I trust you. And so having that trust with her, saying, look, our library needs more diversity. We need more diverse books. And she's like, you tell me how much money you need. We're going to make it happen. And I know not everyone has that support, but I think when you can back up, not like I need money for books, but our students need to see themselves in the books they're reading, and our collection doesn't match, our students. And she backs me 100%. So that's been great. Anything I go to her, she is all for it, and she'll figure out a way to help me, make things happen.
Wow. I appreciate that clearly you've got a team thing going here, and it really doesn't matter who we work for, but there is always an ego at play. And whenever our programming provides our administration an opportunity to shine a light on their school and say, look at all the amazing things that are happening. The library is a very easy, obvious place to bring some of that spotlight to our schools. And so it's never a bad idea to make sure that all the good things that we're doing are things that are resonating with our building goals,
right,
and what our principals and our administration are hoping to achieve. Clearly, your teachers think very highly of you. I'd love to explore some of the programming that you've designed with your teachers in mind. And you've talked about your book clubs, but have you done some things that are meant to support your teachers as educators?
Absolutely. Before school started, my very first year, I created a Google form that I sent out to our teachers. It was organized by month. And what I needed from them was for them to tell me what they needed from me. They could go and change and add to it throughout the year. So if you're working on writing and your students are struggling with this aspect, tell me. I will help them get there. I will add these things. I am here to support you. So that working form has helped quite a bit for them to tell me, maybe it's not a specific skill. Maybe we're just covering, Native American tribes. Well, I can then integrate that into whatever I'm doing in the library. And so I think them knowing that I'm there to support them, I want to know what they're doing in the classroom because I want to help bridge the gap that some of this, make those, correlations from the library to the classroom and help kids see it in a different way. I think once they knew I was on their team with curriculum, that I want you to succeed in the classroom as well. And I hope I relayed that well enough to them that I've really, I'm here for you. I'm a team player and I want you to succeed in your job. So tell me what I need to do to help you do that. So that was one thing I did. So we share that Google sheet where they can tell me what they need from me. The teacher read wall has been a big deal. collaborating with my counselors, that's been a big thing that I've worked with. We've got fantastic counselors, and together with our beta club and our counselors, we created a cat's care closet. We're the Wildcats. And in the library, in my back room, there's shelving with deodorant and toothpaste and toothbrushes, shampoo, snacks. And at any time, the kids know they can walk in, they get a bag, they put what they want in it, and they walk out. There's no questions asked. So I've worked with our counselors on that, working with our counselors with providing books for social emotional learners. I wrote a grant last year to get books. We found that there was a deficit in our collection when it came to those types of books for boys. There's lots of feelings books for girls and how to deal with your emotions, but we were lacking books geared more towards our boys. And so I wrote a grant, got a grant, and the counselors and I sat down and built a collection of books for that group of students. So we got a copy for the library and a copy for them, so that we could both hand off books for that group of students. Something that I started a library leaders club. Another way we got our teachers involved, our library leaders, which are our club members, went around and interviewed our teachers to find out their favorite book as a child. And our third grade library leaders, we created a bookmark with all the third grade teachers and their favorite books, all the fourth grade teachers and their favorite books. So the kids can come get a bookmark. It shows their teacher's favorite books, and then hopefully check it out. And so, and then they're like, oh, look, Miss such and such, I'm reading the same book that was your favorite. And so just little things like that to get the kids and teachers talking about literacy. We do literacy night. I do help with that. I meet with each grade and we try to figure out what we're going to do, how I can be a part of it. I always like the library open for those nights. Anytime I can open the library when we have parents on campus. Last year I just opened it for an art contest, and our gifted art teachers displayed their art and people came through and voted for artwork. And I got to talk to them a little bit about graphic novels and what our kids should be reading. And it gave me an opportunity to speak to parents and that sort of thing. So I try to find little ways to insert myself throughout the campus.
Listen, I think you're doing a stellar job, truly. And I can't help but think, because you come with some credibility, you've recently left the classroom to move into the library. So you have an acute familiarity with what this was very recently like. And friends, I am not going to lie, it has been 2 decades since I've been a teacher of record. Now, I only say that in jest because obviously I teach all the time. I've been teaching all the time, but I left high school, the high school classroom 2 decades ago. And so while I, of course, always have identified as being a librarian, but I'm at heart truly a teacher when I started this profession, the fact is, there are so many aspects of being a classroom teacher in, 2022 that I'm identifying with sort of, but from a distance. Mm-hmm. So it just seems like you're so tuned in right now to your teachers' needs.
I hope I never forget what it's like to be a classroom teacher, the pressure that they have. And so anytime I have the ability to just take anything off their plate, I try to put myself in that position to take it from them. And I never want to start any type of program that's going to put anything on their plate. So I try to, I know what it's like. I know they're going home with the papers to grade and the teachers, the parents to call. And I don't have that responsibility anymore. So anytime I can insert myself and figure out how I can make their day a little bit easier, I do.
Absolutely. I'd love to talk a little bit about things that you do that the student programming. Let's focus on some of the things that you are doing because you love to work with the kids. This is for the kids, and these are the kinds of things that are really going to resonate with the students you work with every day.
All right. So buckle up. All right. So when I started, I went in with 2 challenges that I wanted to do because I'm a very competitive person. and I know lots of students are as well. And so I went in with the 40 book challenge, which I got from Donalyn Miller, stole from her book, The Book Whisperer. So we do the 40 book challenge and the million word challenge. I wanted students to feel successful as readers. There's so much focus on AB Honor Roll and all of these other things, and these are the only way you can get awards. I talked to my principal about it, and I said, look, if the students at our school meet these challenges, can they walk on stage and get an award at awards day? And she said, sure. And so this was a way for students who are not AB students or straight A students to still have an opportunity to walk across that stage and get an award. And so we kind of promoted it like that. So those two challenges are pretty big. This year I started Battle of the Books. And I don't know of any other elementary library in our state that's doing it. If anyone's listening that is, please email me because I need someone to battle against. But that's where we took our Louisiana Young Readers' Choice state books. And if the students read 5 of those, they qualify for a team. And so that's another award they get this year. If they read 5, they get to hold a little sign and take their picture and say, I read 5 Battle of the Book titles. And they get to be a part of a team. And they get to compete against other readers at our school. That's been a huge game changer this year. It's brought in because they're not all chapter books. There's lots of picture books. So it's very doable for a lot of our students. Even our students that are struggling readers are able to be a part of this. So it brought in lots of our boys and girls. I have our Library Leaders Club, which everybody wants in now. Last year, it was hard to kind of get members. And this year, I'm like, I can't take all these kids. But it's great. They are a student advocacy club where we have a meeting and they tell me what we need to do to promote literacy in the school. And so every month we come up with something new and they go out and do it. This month they're creating buttons and they design them on Canva, send them to me. I print them, cut them out. Each student that makes them gets 6 buttons to go hand out to people around the school that they feel need a little extra push with reading. And so they made them for our veterans, for the veterans program. And it was so sweet seeing them with their little buttons. That's been a big deal. We've got, we're starting this year a free book, not a free book table, but a free book display outside the library where students can come and get free books. So students donate books. We put them on the shelf. They can do that. I do paw prints in books. We're the Wildcats. So I did a little thing this year where I put little paw prints inside random books throughout the library. And if you are reading a book and come across a paw print, you come and you get a sticker in the library, something silly like that. We do our Book Talk Tuesdays, which go on that Google slide I talked about. We do Flipgrid book talks. Our 4th graders spend a lot of time learning how to give a proper book talk, and they record them, and then we get to push those out where they actually do a video book talk. We do lots of green screen things with your favorite books. We create posters. They can take a picture with their favorite book, kind of like I can't think of who did it, but anyway, they hold their favorite book. We put posters around the school with them holding their favorite books. And kids will come in and they're like, I want the book that such and such was holding in the 3rd grade hall that has the dog on it, We do that. Lots of modeling. I do lots of book trailers. I'm trying to think of all the other things. There's a lot going on in our library.
Consistently, all of this talks about identifies your students as readers. So, and I'm sure that your students as 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, so this would be like 9, 10, 11-year-olds, friends, if you are outside of the United States, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, these are students, I'm sure, who identify by the sports that they like to play, or maybe they're extracurriculars, or they're in scouting, or they are, involved in their church, or they are, they're doing all all sorts of things. But at the heart of your program, you celebrate the fact that they're readers. And clearly you've got momentum on your side.
A little bit.
Well, and I know listeners are going to love to be able to follow you. We're going to be sure to mention where you share any of these successes on social media. You know, you've talked about some amazing things. Are there any sort of home runs or things that you would absolutely are must-haves when it comes to your program? Because, you know, listening right now are people who are probably going to be interviewing for elementary positions. You've got a lot of library students who themselves could see themselves working in an elementary library. I guess my biggest question right now, you mentioned you're on a fixed schedule. How many classes a day do you teach? And I didn't hear you mention anything about an assistant.
I don't have an assistant. I teach 6 classes a day. So 6 40-minute classes a day. And I have a lunch period that I'm off. But yeah, my brain goes all the time. So it is a lot. I think I went in a million miles an hour my first year, which was great. This year I've been able to slow it down a little bit because lots of these things have been implemented. So now I'm focusing on just implementing a few things at a time. But some game changers, things that just bring the kids in. The challenges are big. Students want to feel accomplished. I always say, you know, they just want to be seen. And it is a way to celebrate readers because, like you said, we all want to be readers. Even my students that come in and say, I hate reading, I tell them, I did too. But I know deep down, I always wanted to be a reader. I wanted to be seen as that. And lots of kids say they hate reading, not because they hate reading, because it's just an escape. And so, being able to connect with your students, having those conversations with them. And I will tell you a huge thing, especially if you have a really reluctant reader, what I've done, try to make those connections, find out their interests. And when I come across a book of either shelving or new books that come in, I pull that book, I write that student's name on it, check it out to them and go deliver it to their classroom. It's like Santa just walked in the door. And those little things that don't take any time to do are such a big deal. So I think it's finding how you can reach those reluctant readers. And those are some of the ways. But the challenges that allow all students to participate. Everybody can be seen as a reader. And like I tell them, if you do the 40 book challenge, but say you only read 30, it's 30 more than you would have read without it. So like I celebrate you. There's no like, oh man, no, like great, high five, you read 30, I'm proud of you. I do a little thing, and all of this, most of what I do, I've seen somewhere, Twitter, somewhere, I've copied it from someone, but it's a would you rather jars. That gets every single person in the library. So it's, you know, I just do a jar of pom-poms and then the 2 would you rather. So last week it was, would you rather have Thanksgiving with 3 celebrities or would you rather have Thanksgiving with all of your family? And the kids just drop a pom-pom in the one they want. But when I tell you it gets teachers in the library, every teacher, not every teacher, but half of our teachers walk through to see what the would you rather is and cast their vote. When our district comes through, they walk through and do the would you rather. And so that's something that gets everybody. It's so silly and so simple. And some weeks it's like, would you rather be covered in spiders or snakes? You know, it's silly stuff. But the goal is to get people in the doors. And kids will just come in off the bus in the morning and vote for their would you rather. Hey, Miss Barker, and leave out. So that's been a way to just get people to walk in the door. I do a student choice display, which is a big deal. Anybody can put a book there. So if you've read a great book, I do my normal displays with, you know, Women's History Month and that sort of thing. But this is student choices. And so if you've read a great book, you go put it on that display. And so the students know that these are student pick books. Some kid thought this book was so great that they put it here. So that's something they always go to that to see what other kids are reading and what they liked. I have games. I bring in the board games. And if ever some weeks we just might have a day, if it's a stressful week, we might just play games the last 15 minutes of class. And kids need that connection with other students. They need, I don't feel like families do that like they used to. And no computer games. We're like getting on the floor playing Battleship. And that's been a big deal, as silly as it is, but just things to get them to want to come in the room. But our challenges, our book talks, the games, student displays, those are the things that I think are game changers.
Well, and can I just say, as a high school librarian, that the games require they put their phones down. And so there is something to be said for having games out for students of all ages, because what you can't be doing is, scrolling through all of your, Instagram or TikTok while you're also trying to be engaged in a game or work on a puzzle together. And, I love all of these amazing ideas because you're giving everybody an opportunity to find a reason to come to your space, whether it's to share with their reading, or it's about making sure that they cast their little pom-pom for their voting. Again, it gives them, it's an invitation. It's an invitation to be a part of your space. You're clearly passionate about being an elementary school librarian. Undoubtedly, we have listeners who are considering applying for an elementary library position, or by fate of circumstance, they find themselves working in an elementary library because that's what was available. Would you share with us what you love about working with this age group?
Everything. Everything. Being a librarian allows me to interact with every student on our campus. And I didn't have that as a classroom teacher. I only could impact those 50 students, where now I get to impact 1,100 students. And at this age, they are sponges, they are eager, and they just soak in everything. So if you come in with a passion for reading and a love of books, and you talk about your favorite books in which you've read, they are in. They will buy in at this age. So I feel like this is a critical age, because once they get to middle school, it gets a little trickier. So I've got the pressure of getting them to buy into this and know that they are readers, regardless as if you are reading chapter books or picture books or graphic novels, or a slow reader or a fast reader. I tell them I'm the slowest reader of all my friends. It doesn't stop me. I'm just slow. But I enjoy it. And so I think when you can come in, this age group is the most critical, because you get them right before they turn into middle school kids. And you get to change the way they think about books and change that negativity that some of them have kind of built up. So you have that opportunity to turn that around. So many students walk into our library feeling defeated because they've struggled in class with reading. And I always let them in on the secret. I struggled too. I was just like you. I get it. So let me help you see yourself as a reader. And so I think making those connections with them, we have such a big opportunity at this age. Elementary librarians get to cultivate a positive culture around reading. I'm always on the lookout for the perfect book for my struggling readers. I'm always kind of holding books to the side, like this is going to be for this kid when they walk in the door. Sending those sticky notes to their classrooms and delivering them. I get to teach them the fundamentals of research and book talks and poetry and all the fun things that have been slowly pushed out of the classroom. I have the opportunity to embrace those things and the love of reading. And just make it fun. As a librarian, you get to create a safe space where they know they're welcomed and be able to breathe. I tell them, when you walk in these doors, you should be able to let everything else go. Yes, we're going to learn stuff, but you get to breathe when you're in here. Every student deserves a space on campus where they can breathe. And what a great opportunity as an elementary library to be the facilitator of that space, that breathing space. And I'm going to quote Jimmy Casas because I love him. He's a great author. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Lead with passion, live with purpose, love with pride. And when you can go into your job with that every day, regardless of the age you teach, but these little elementary ones, they are watching what we're doing. And when you can be that kind of leader, they're going to hold on to it. They're going to want to be in your space, and they're going to want to do what you're doing because they see that positivity. They're like, what is she doing to be so happy? She's reading. Well, I'm going to read too.
Kristy Barker, you're an absolute delight. I know listeners are hoping that you share some of this out on social. Is there a place where listeners can see examples of the kinds of things you've been talking about? I know that Twitter's a cesspool and everybody's worried, Twitter's going to disappear, whatever, combust. But, do you share any of this out on social media? Because again, I know we're going to be putting, and friends, do make sure to check out today's show notes. But, are there places that you do tend to put any of this out so that your families can see it? I'm just curious.
We do. We have a Facebook page. It's Central Intermediate Librarian. We'll put that in the notes as well. I'll also put one of my building reading and learning communities PowerPoints that I just did at our state conference out. But I put pictures out. I love to do the would you rather on Facebook. Like, hey, parents, if you're wanting to know what your kids want for Christmas, they don't want this, but they do want this. So it is kind of fun. I put that out. Sometimes any of our challenges we do, I put that on social media. This past week, I just posted pictures. We had book talks going on. We had games going on. We had writing going on. And I just went around and snapped pictures and put that so parents could see their students in action in the library. So I do post pictures on our Facebook page. That's a little more up to date than my website. I do post their challenge pictures on there as well, but not our day-to-day happenings. Don't really post that on the website. So Facebook is a great place. I have been a follower on Twitter this year. I've not been super active just because I've been busy. And so I'm on Twitter, Barker in Books, but I will say you probably don't want to go there to find all the school stuff. Plus, it's my personal site, so I don't put really student stuff on there. But I do follow a lot of really cool people and learn a lot of really cool things.
Friends, I can't tell you how grateful I am because this conversation couldn't come at a better time. Kristy's energy is absolutely infectious. And when you consider that so many of us are close to being halfway through our school year, this is an opportunity for us to really energize our programming and sort of have that strong second half of our school year. And I think that's really vital because it's so easy for us to get bogged down and lose sight of what really matters. And so, Kristy, I'm so grateful you've been able to join us. And I encourage listeners to take a look at our show notes. Kristy, I wish you the very best and all that you're doing for the rest of the school year. Thank you so much.
Oh, Amy, thank you so much for this opportunity. I love to share. I love hearing what other people share. Your program's amazing. So thank you for this opportunity for me to get to highlight a few of the things that we're doing at our library.
Well, I'm so grateful you're willing to let others learn from all the amazing things you're doing. Have a great, fantastic rest of the year, Kristy Barker.
You too. Thank you.
I am especially grateful to the guests who are coming on the show in the last few weeks of 2022. I appreciate this is an incredibly busy time of the year, and selfishly, I thank you on behalf of all of our listeners who are grateful that there are those of you who step up like Kristy, and thank you so much for helping us end this year together. If you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. One last friendly reminder, friends, I encourage you to take advantage of Capstone's generous $20 discount off an order of $100 or more using the code UNITED. The topic of our next episode will be supporting literacy and well-being, and my conversation with Dr. Margaret Murga. I hope you will tune in.